Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Aaron, for the opportunity to speak to your class. Hello, students. I hope you guys are excited about watching Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. My name is Prahim, and I am a writer, director, producer, and I'm just going to share some of my thoughts with you on Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing, and its impact. And so bear with me. I'm going to be kind of reading off some paper. I've just kind of been traveling a lot and have a few festivals that I've been gearing up to, so I'm just going to try to give you my spiel as best I can, okay? So, to me, Spike Lee is a master filmmaker. He is one of the greatest filmmakers to ever live, and he's a visual storyteller. You know, he uses every film device that he can to tell the story. He's going to use the sound, he's going to use the production design, he's going to use the editing, he's going to play in every single area of film that he's allowed to. He'll take it into musical, he'll go abstract, he'll get very artsy, he can get very dramatic, he'll break the fourth wall. Spike Lee understands film as an art, and he uses it to create powerful pieces of art that will be studied throughout history. So Spike is an independent filmmaker. I would say that he's very brash and in your face. His work covers a wide variety of topics, but he's known to have an emphasis on talking about race in America. And Do the Right Thing, I would say, is one of his early pieces on talking about race in America, how we all interact with each other, what is the right thing, and how do we go about coexisting as we move forward. And so Spike Lee, he does it all. He does narrative filmmaking, he does documentaries, he does shorts, he does commercials, he does music videos, he does documentaries. So Spike Lee that's why in my mind, Spike Lee is one of the greatest filmmakers to ever live. For the last 20 plus years, he's created at least one project a year, which I think is just remarkable. So not only is he consistent in his work and his craft, but he's also putting out award-winning films and content that again is challenging the world to think differently and just see the world in a different light. Let's see. I would say Spike is one of the trailblazing black filmmakers. He was part of the wave of the '90s, along with your John Singletons, your Hughes brothers, and your Gina Prince Blythewood. Spike Lee during that time period was probably the largest black filmmaker in that time, and what that did was he was a beacon. He was an example for many other young African Americans and Hispanic and minority children. Like, he was an example of, oh, this is something that I can do as well. Because for the most part, most people think of directors as old white men, and to see this young, brash, unapologetic young black man coming out here telling stories that people had never really seen before, it was refreshing, it was innovative, and he inspired the masses that you see today. These people who are now making movies today, your Ryan Cooglers, your Ava DuVernays, your Childish Gambinos, Donald Glovers, they were inspired by Spike Lee because for a long time he was one of the only black filmmakers out there doing it. Of course, we have the elder statesmen like your Gordon Parks and your Oscar Micheaux, who were doing movies in the early days, and then into the '70s. You have I'm losing some names, but there were a lot of black filmmakers. But that '90s wave, I feel like that's the wave that kind of brings us to our current day as far as the impact and who is actually empowered and inspired by Spike Lee. Let's see. So for the past 20 years, I was saying that he's made at least one movie for 20 years. Let's see. Spike woke me up with this film, Do the Right Thing. I believe I was about 6 years old when I watched Do the Right Thing for the first time, and I actually saw it in a babysitter's house. We snuck in, we were watching HBO, and it blew my mind just to see black people on the screen looking beautiful. The story was captivating. It was, as a young kid, to just kind of see race relations on the screen, and all these very diverse characters that have their own flaws and their own positive attributes, and just kind of seeing them all clash in this world. It was a very powerful thing for a young kid to watch, and from that moment forward, I feel like I walked through the world just a little bit more aware, and I feel like that's what Do the Right Thing did for me. It made me aware. And so after watching the film, I kind of set out on a journey to where I wanted to soak up everything Black. So I started to, read more about Black history and just get immersed in my history. And I found out about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and I started finding all this power and empowerment from all this reading. And then I stumbled across hip hop, and all of these things were kind of like seeds that were planted in Do the Right Thing. And that's the one thing I love about Spike Lee, is that there's so many different like little pockets of stories. So you have the general story that just laid out on the surface for you, but then when you dig deeper, you can find all of these nuanced stories about, just individual stories. I don't want to tell you too much because I want you all to go in and enjoy the film, but there's stories under the stories in Do the Right Thing that I hope that you as your class will be able to discuss and talk about how these moments made you feel. Let's see. And so another one of the things that this film kind of represents, it represents race in America. It also is going to establish, Black style in cinema. The film is centered on one of the hottest days in New York City, and Spike does everything in his powers to make you feel that in the film. So with the bright colors and the saturation, the sweat, everything in the movie is supposed to make you feel hot, and also let you know what this 90s feeling of being Black in America is. So you have this rise of Black culture, you have rise of hip hop, you have this rise of the political Black mind, the intellectual Black mind, and then you also have the rise of violence. And so all of these things are kind of bubbling up in this film, and this is like the early 90s, and you see that this is kind of the state that we moved into the 90s and the 2000s. And so it brings us to whether is this film culturally impactful now? I would say absolutely. You can look to, I think it was, I don't want to get my dates incorrect, but 3-4 years ago with the death of Eric Gardner, who was choked out and murdered by the police, and it was displayed on camera and watched nationally on CNN and all other news cycles. That paralleled to Radio Raheem's situation in the film, and so many things that are still relevant today as far as how races get along. You look at with Donald Trump in the White House, and more bigotry being seen and televised. Like, this film, to me, it's sad that it still resonates. It's sad that there's still this racial divide in our country. But again, it just goes to show you how far ahead of his time Spike Lee is. When the movie first happened, it was, loosely based on a true story about a young man in New York who lost his life. And now, 2018, you see it as, it started out as art imitating life, and now it's life imitating art. And so it's just that cycle. And so again, hopefully, this is a movie that we can look at, we can study, so we don't have to continue to make these same mistakes as we move forward. And, it's really about how do these races get along? How do we coexist? How do we do the right thing? What is the right thing? And so that's another one of the pivotal questions that the film asks. What is the right thing? Let's see. And so as far as Spike's influence, so for me, just by being a filmmaker, just by being a great filmmaker, being consistent and putting movies out on a yearly basis, Spike Lee set the example. And so for me, as a young kid, seeing him, he was the proof that I needed, that I could go on and be a writer-director in this industry. If Spike Lee could do it, then I felt like I could do it. And I know that a lot of minorities, a lot of people of color, a lot of women felt the same way. Spike Lee gave a voice to the voiceless. And then not only that, Spike Lee actually was proactive and getting more black people behind the cameras. I mean, you can look. He has a slew of family members who are now writer, directors, producers. He's produced many films. He teaches at NYU. Spike Lee is a champion of black film, and he has gone out of his way to make sure that Hollywood includes more blacks and brown people behind the camera. And one of the things I always hear Spike Lee say, you know, he wanted to bring some flavor to Hollywood. And so not only has he brought flavor to Hollywood, he brought flavor to the world. He's showcased the beauty of what black could be to the masses. And I'll always be forever grateful for that. And so closing up, Do the Right Thing was very impactful in my life. It was probably one of my favorite Spike Lee movies out of his collection. And I just believe that as students, as future filmmakers, you are doing yourself a disservice by not knowing all of the films that are out there, all of the great filmmakers, and knowing their work. And Spike Lee is someone that you should study. He's someone that you should learn from. Whether you like or dislike his material, you cannot deny that he is an artist and that these paintings that he's created, these visual paintings, deserve to be made, and they have a space in the world, and they're needed. And so I hope that as you guys watch this film, as you all discuss the matters, that you all move forward as stronger filmmakers and hopefully tell stories that will hopefully bring us together and not continue to separate us. Again, my name is Prahim. You guys can check me out on social media. Got my new film Stuck, hitting the festival circuit. I hope you all have a great time with the film. Aaron, peace. Have a great afternoon.